When a billionaire CEO calls you at midnight begging for help, you don't ask questions, you just go. But what Ethan Cole found that night wasn't the powerful woman the world knew. It was someone broken, terrified, and trapped behind the walls of a perfect lie. What started as one desperate phone call became a fight against a man who controlled everything: money, reputation, and fear itself. This is a story about power, survival, and what happens when the person who has everything loses the only thing that matters: freedom. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it pulls you in, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The house was too quiet. Ethan Cole stood at the kitchen sink, hands submerged in lukewarm dishwater, staring at nothing. The rhythm of washing dishes had become a kind of meditation over the years, something to do with his hands while his brain tried not to think too hard. Plate, rinse, rack, repeat. Outside, the street was empty, the neighborhood tucked in for the night. His daughter Maya had been asleep for 2 hours. Homework done, teeth brushed, her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Everything was routine. Everything was fine. Ethan dried his hands on a faded towel and glanced at the clock on the microwave. 11:43 p.m. He should go to bed. He had work in the morning, nothing glamorous, just managing a small landscaping crew, but it paid the bills and kept Maya in dance classes. That was enough. He was reaching for the light switch when his phone buzzed on the counter. The vibration was loud in the silence, rattling against the laminate. Ethan frowned. Nobody called him this late. Not unless something was wrong. He picked up the phone, didn't recognize the number. For a second, he considered letting it go to voicemail. Then his thumb moved on instinct, accepting the call. Hello? Silence. Not dead air. He could hear breathing, shallow, uneven. Hello? He said again, quieter this time. Ethan. The voice hit him like a punch to the chest, soft, fractured. A voice he hadn't heard in over a decade but would recognize anywhere. Victoria. His brain stuttered, trying to catch up. Victoria Hale. The girl from college who used to sit in the back of the lecture hall with her arms crossed, challenging every professor who thought they were smarter than her. The woman who'd gone on to build an empire while he'd stayed behind, rebuilding a life from the wreckage of a failed marriage. Ethan, Her voice cracked. I didn't know who else to call. He could hear it now, the tremor beneath her words. She wasn't just upset, she was scared. What's wrong? He asked, already moving toward the hallway, toward his shoes. He locked me out. 3 words. That was all she gave him. Who? Victoria, where are you? I'm outside. I'm sitting outside and I can't. She stopped. He heard her breath hitch, the sound of someone trying very hard not to fall apart. Can you come? Please? I know it's late. I know I have no right to ask, but I don't. Send me your location, Ethan said. He was already grabbing his jacket, checking his pockets for his keys. I'm on my way. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, barely a whisper. Thank you. The call ended. 2 seconds later, his phone buzzed with a pin drop. He stared at the address, his stomach tightening. It was almost 40 minutes away, in a part of town where the homes didn't have numbers. They had names. He scribbled a note for Maya's babysitter, Mrs. Cho from next door, who had a key for emergencies, and slipped it under her door on his way to the truck. The engine coughed to life, rough and loud in the sleeping neighborhood. He didn't care. He was already pulling out of the driveway, his mind racing faster than the speedometer. Victoria Hale. He hadn't thought about her in years. Or maybe that was a lie. Maybe he thought about her every time he saw her name in a business article or caught a glimpse of her face on some Forbes list. She'd done exactly what everyone knew she would, taken over her family's failing company and turned it into something untouchable. She was sharp, brilliant, terrifying in the best way. And now she was sitting outside in the middle of the night, calling him. The roads were empty. Ethan pushed the speed limit, his hands tight on the wheel. He tried to picture her, what she'd look like now, whether she'd changed. The last time he'd seen her was graduation. She'd been wearing a black dress, hair pulled back, shaking hands with everyone like she was already practicing for boardrooms. He'd wanted to say something to her that day. Anything. But she'd been surrounded by people, and he'd been nobody. He still remembered the way she looked at him once, just once, across the quad, like she was about to say something, but then someone called her name, and the moment was gone. The GPS pulled him off the highway and into a neighborhood that didn't feel real. The houses were set back from the road, hidden behind gates and sculpted hedges. Street lamps glowed soft and golden, lighting up driveways that could fit 6 cars. Everything was perfect. Sterile. Cold. He slowed as the GPS announced his arrival, scanning the street for there. She was sitting on the curb in front of a mansion that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Even from a distance, he could see her, small, folded into herself, arms wrapped around her knees. She wasn't wearing a coat, just a thin sweater and jeans. Ethan pulled over and killed the engine. For a second, he just sat there, staring at her through the windshield. She hadn't moved, hadn't looked up. He got out of the truck, his boots scraping against the pavement, and walked toward her. "Victoria." She looked up. The woman staring back at him was not the girl he remembered. Her face was the same, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that used to cut through people like glass. But now those eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders, uncombed. There was a bruise forming along her jaw, faint but visible in the streetlight. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Hey," he said quietly, crouching down in front of her. "I'm here." She didn't say anything. She just looked at him, and for a moment he thought she might break. But then she nodded, once, and let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know where else to go." "Don't apologize." He glanced at the house behind her, massive, spotless, windows dark. "What happened?" Her jaw tightened. "He came home angry. I don't even know why. He started yelling, and then he told me to get out. When I tried to talk to him, he grabbed my phone and threw it. Then he locked the doors." Ethan's hands curled into fists. "Who?" "You're my fiancé," she said flatly. "Richard." The name didn't mean anything to Ethan, but the way she said it, like it tasted bitter, told him everything he needed to know. "How long have you been out here?" "I don't know, 2 hours maybe?" 2 hours, sitting alone on the curb in November. He wanted to put his jacket around her shoulders, but something in her posture told him not to move too fast. "Okay," he said instead. "Let's get you somewhere warm." She nodded but didn't stand. Her hands were shaking. Ethan reached out slowly, offering his hand. She stared at it for a second, like she'd forgotten what the gesture meant. Then she took it, her fingers cold and small against his palm, and let him pull her to her feet. She swayed slightly, and he steadied her, one hand on her elbow. "Can you walk?" "Yes." Her voice was stronger now, but barely. "I'm fine." She wasn't fine, not even close. He guided her to the truck and opened the passenger door. She climbed in without a word, pulling her arms tight around herself. Ethan shut the door gently and walked around to the driver's side, his mind spinning. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. All he knew was that Victoria Hale, the woman who'd built an empire, who commanded rooms full of people twice her age, was sitting in his truck looking like she'd been shattered into pieces. He started the engine and pulled away from the mansion, watching it disappear in the rearview mirror. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The heater hummed, pushing warm air into the cabin. Victoria stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. Ethan glanced at her. "My place, unless you have somewhere else." She shook her head. "No." "Okay." More silence, then quieter. "Why did you come?" He didn't have a good answer for that. Or maybe he did, and he just didn't want to say it out loud. "Because you called," he said simply. She turned to look at him then, really look at him, and something flickered in her eyes, something fragile and raw. "I haven't seen you in 12 years. "I know." "You could have ignored it." "I couldn't." She looked away again, her throat working like she was trying to swallow something down. They drove in silence for another 10 minutes before she spoke again. "He's going to be angry when he realizes I'm gone." Ethan's grip tightened on the wheel. "Let him be angry. You don't understand. Richard doesn't just get angry. She stopped, her breath catching. "He makes things happen. He has people. Connections." "So do you." She laughed, but it was hollow. Not anymore, Ethan frowned. What does that mean? She didn't answer, just pulled her knees up to her chest and rested her forehead against them, making herself small. He wanted to press, but he didn't. Not yet. By the time they pulled into his driveway, it was past midnight. The house was dark except for the porch light he'd left on. He turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, unsure how to do this. It's not much, he said, but it's warm and safe. Victoria lifted her head, looking at the small two-story house with its peeling paint and overgrown hedges. For a second he thought she might cry. It's perfect, she whispered. They got out of the truck, and Ethan led her up the front steps, unlocking the door as quietly as he could. Inside, the house smelled like dish soap and the faint linger of Maya's strawberry shampoo. He flicked on the hallway light, keeping his voice low. My daughter's asleep upstairs. I'll set you up in the guest room. Victoria nodded, following him through the narrow hallway. He pushed open the door to the small room at the back of the house, barely more than a closet with a bed, but it had clean sheets and a window that locked. Bathroom's across the hall, he said. I'll get you some clothes, sweats or something. Ethan. He turned. She was standing in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself again, and for the first time since he'd picked her up, she looked him in the eye. Thank you. He nodded. Get some rest. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow. She didn't move, just stood there staring at him like she was trying to memorize his face. I mean it, she said. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't. You don't have to explain, Ethan said gently. Just sleep. Okay? She hesitated, then nodded and stepped into the room. He pulled the door halfway closed, giving her privacy, and headed to his own room to dig out an old t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants that might fit her. When he came back, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. He set the clothes on the dresser. I'll be down the hall if you need anything. Okay. He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. Ethan? Yeah? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things had been different? He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the girl he used to know buried somewhere beneath the fear. All the time, he said quietly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He left her there and walked back to his own room, closing the door behind him. He sat on the edge of his bed, his phone in his hand, staring at the dark screen. He didn't know what he'd just gotten himself into, but he knew, without a doubt, that he wasn't going to walk away. Not this time. Ethan didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him. Every creak made him tense, half expecting Victoria to knock on his door or, worse, for someone else to show up. He didn't know who Richard was, didn't know what kind of man could make someone like Victoria Hale afraid, but his gut told him it wasn't good. At 6:15 a.m., he gave up on sleep and got out of bed. The hallway was still dark, the guest room door closed. He moved quietly down the stairs, started a pot of coffee, and tried to think. He needed to talk to her. Needed to understand what was actually going on. But pushing too hard, too fast felt wrong. She'd been through something. He could see it in the way she held herself, the way she flinched when he moved too quickly. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the kitchen with the smell of cheap grocery store grounds. Ethan poured himself a cup and stood by the window, watching the sky lighten. Footsteps on the stairs. He turned. Victoria appeared in the doorway, wearing the clothes he'd left her. The sweatpants were too long, pooling around her bare feet, and the t-shirt hung off one shoulder. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She looked younger like this. Smaller. Morning, he said. Morning. She didn't quite meet his eyes, just hovered in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be there. Coffee? He offered. Please. He poured her a cup, handed it over. She wrapped both hands around it, holding it like it was the only solid thing in the room. Did you sleep? He asked. A little. She took a sip, winced. This is terrible. Yeah, I know. A faint smile tugged at her lips. It was gone as fast as it came. They stood there in silence, the awkwardness settling between them like fog. Ethan didn't know how to start this conversation, didn't know what questions were okay to ask. Victoria solved the problem for him. I need to go back, she said quietly. Ethan's stomach dropped. Back where? To the house. I need my things. My wallet, my laptop, my... She stopped, her jaw tightening. Everything I own is in that house. Okay, we'll go get it. She looked up sharply. We? You're not going alone. Ethan, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. He set his coffee down, crossed his arms. But I'm not letting you walk back into that house by yourself. Not after last night. Her expression flickered, something between gratitude and guilt. Richard might be there, she said. Good. Then he can explain why he threw you out in the middle of the night. It's not that simple. Why not? She opened her mouth, then closed it, looked away. Victoria, Ethan said, softer now. What's going on? And I don't mean last night. I mean all of it. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was so low he almost didn't hear it. He controls everything. Ethan waited. My schedule, my phone, who I see, where I go. At first, I thought it was just him being protective. He said he worried about me, that people would take advantage of me because of who I am, and I believed him. She laughed bitterly. I actually believed him. How long has this been going on? 2 years. We've been engaged for 6 months. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. Does he hit you? No. She paused. Not exactly. He doesn't have to. He knows how to make me feel small, how to make me doubt myself. And if I push back, he reminds me of everything he's done for me, everything I owe him. You don't owe him anything. That's not how he sees it. Ethan wanted to say more, wanted to tell her that none of this was normal, that she didn't deserve any of it. But he could see the shame in her eyes, the way she was bracing herself for judgment. So instead he just said, When do you want to go? She blinked. What? To get your stuff. When do you want to go? She stared at him. You're serious? Yeah, I am. For a second she looked like she might argue. Then she nodded. Now, she said, before he wakes up. They took Ethan's truck. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She'd barely spoken since they left the house. Ethan glanced at her. You sure about this? No. She didn't look at him. But I don't have a choice. The drive felt longer this time, the silence heavier. Ethan kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights following them. But the road stayed empty. When they pulled up to the mansion, Victoria's whole body went rigid. His car's not here, she said, relief bleeding into her voice. Good. They got out of the truck and walked up the long driveway. The house looked different in the daylight, still massive, still pristine, but somehow more lifeless, like a mausoleum. Victoria pulled a key from her pocket and unlocked the front door. It swung open silently. Inside, everything was white. White walls, white furniture, white floors. It looked like a showroom, sterile, cold. This way, Victoria said, heading for the stairs. Ethan followed her up to the second floor and down a long hallway. She stopped in front of a door and hesitated, her hand on the knob. What? Ethan asked. I don't know what I'm going to find. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. She nodded, took a breath, and opened the door. The room had been destroyed. Clothes were shredded and scattered across the floor. Drawers had been pulled out and emptied, their contents dumped in piles. The mattress was half off the bed, the sheets torn. Picture frames were smashed, glass glittering in the carpet. Victoria stood frozen in the doorway, staring. Jesus, Ethan breathed. She walked into the room slowly, like she was moving through water, picked up a scrap of fabric, what used to be a dress, maybe, let it fall. He did this after I left, she said, her voice hollow. Ethan's jaw clenched. What kind of... He wanted to make sure I had nothing to come back to. She knelt down, started sifting through the wreckage. This is what he does. He doesn't just take things away. He destroys them. Ethan crouched beside her. What do you need? My laptop. It should be in the closet. And my purse. It has my wallet, my phone charger, my... She stopped, her hand shaking. Everything important. They searched together, pulling apart the chaos. Ethan found the laptop under a pile of shredded paperwork. The screen was cracked, but it still turned on. He set it aside and kept looking. Victoria found her purse buried under the bed. She opened it, checked inside, and let out a breath. "Okay," she said. "Okay, this is good. What else?" "There's a box. In the back of the closet. It has—" She hesitated. "Personal things, documents, photos." Ethan moved to the closet, pushed aside the hanging wreckage of her wardrobe, and found a small wooden box shoved into the corner. He pulled it out, handed it to her. She opened it carefully, like she was afraid it might explode. Inside were papers, a few old photos, a flash drive. She exhaled. "This is it," she said. "This is everything I need." "You're sure?" "Yes." They gathered everything into a duffel bag Ethan found in the hallway, miraculously untouched, and headed back downstairs. They were almost to the front door when they heard it, a car pulling into the driveway. Victoria went pale. "Is that—" "Yes." Ethan's pulse kicked up. "Back door?" "This way." She grabbed his arm and pulled him through the house toward the kitchen. But before they could reach it, the front door opened. A man stepped inside. He was tall, well-dressed, with the kind of face that belonged in cologne ads. Handsome in a calculated way. His expression was calm. Too calm. "Victoria," he said smoothly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Victoria stopped walking. Her hand was still on Ethan's arm, her grip tight. "I came to get my things," she said, her voice steady. Too steady. Richard's gaze slid to Ethan, then back to Victoria. "And you brought a friend. This is Ethan. I don't care who he is." Richard stepped closer, his smile never faltering. "You should have called. I would have had someone pack your things for you." "I tried calling. You blocked me." "Did I?" He tilted his head like he was genuinely confused. "I must have forgotten. You know how busy things have been." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. This guy was good. The perfect mask of concern and confusion, like he had no idea what Victoria was talking about. "I'm leaving," Victoria said. "I just need my things, and then I'll go." "Leaving?" Richard's smile faltered. "Victoria, sweetheart, you're not making sense. You're upset. Let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." "Of course there is." He reached for her, and she stepped back. His expression darkened. "Don't be dramatic." "She said she's leaving," Ethan said quietly. Richard's eyes snapped to him. For just a second, the mask slipped. Ethan saw something cold and sharp underneath. "I'm sorry," Richard said, his tone dripping with false politeness. "Who are you, exactly?" "Someone who's not going to let you talk to her like that." Richard laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. "Let me guess. Old boyfriend? College sweetheart? Here to play hero?" He turned back to Victoria. "Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we've built for some—" "Stop," Victoria said, her voice shaking now. "Just stop." "I'm trying to help you, Victoria. You're not thinking clearly. You never do when you're emotional." Ethan stepped between them. "We're leaving. Now." Richard didn't move, just looked at Ethan like he was an insect. "You should be careful," Richard said softly. "Getting involved in things you don't understand." "I understand enough." Richard smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "Do you have a daughter, Ethan?" Ethan's blood went cold. "Yeah," Richard continued, his voice pleasant. "I thought so. Cute kid. What's her name? Maya?" Ethan's fists clenched. "Don't." "I'm just making conversation." Richard tilted his head. "It's a dangerous world out there. You never know what might happen to the people you care about." Victoria grabbed Ethan's arm. "Let's go, please." Ethan didn't move. He stared at Richard, every muscle in his body coiled tight. "If you go near my daughter—" "I won't have to," Richard said calmly. "You'll stay away from Victoria all on your own, because you're smart, and you know what's good for you." Ethan took a step forward. Victoria pulled him back. "Ethan, don't. He's not worth it." Richard watched them, his smile lingering. "Take care, Victoria," he said. "I'll see you soon." Victoria didn't answer. She just turned and walked toward the door, pulling Ethan with her. They made it outside into the cold air and didn't stop until they reached the truck. Ethan's hands were shaking as he unlocked the doors. They climbed in. He started the engine, pulled out of the driveway, and didn't look back. Neither of them spoke until they were miles away. Then Victoria broke. She doubled over, her breath coming in gasps, and Ethan pulled over onto the shoulder of the road. She didn't cry. She just sat there, shaking, her hands pressed to her face. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know he knew about—" "It's not your fault," Ethan said. "He threatened your daughter." "I know." "You should take me back. I'm not taking you back." She looked up at him, her eyes wild. "Ethan, you don't understand what he's capable of. He'll hurt her. He'll hurt you. Then we go to the police. They won't believe me. He's Richard Donovan. He has lawyers, connections, money, and I'm just—" She stopped, her voice breaking. "I'm just the crazy fiancé who ran away." Ethan reached over, took her hand. "You're not crazy," he said. "And you're not alone." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Ethan didn't have a good answer. Or maybe he did, and he just wasn't ready to say it. "Because someone has to," he said finally. She squeezed his hand, and for the first time since he'd picked her up, she didn't look quite so lost. "Okay," she said. "Okay." Ethan pulled back onto the road and drove them home. Behind them, the mansion disappeared into the distance. But Richard's words lingered, heavy and cold, like a promise. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Ethan kept checking the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see Richard's car following them, but the road stayed clear. Victoria sat rigid in the passenger seat, her arms wrapped around the duffel bag like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. When they pulled into Ethan's driveway, the morning sun was already climbing, turning the sky a pale, washed-out blue. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, his hand still gripping the wheel. "You okay?" he asked. Victoria didn't answer right away, just stared at the house through the windshield. "I don't know what okay means anymore," she said finally. Ethan wanted to tell her it would get better, that everything would work out, but the words felt empty, so he just nodded and got out of the truck. Inside, the house was quiet. Maya would be up soon, asking questions he didn't know how to answer. He led Victoria to the kitchen and poured them both coffee, stronger this time, and they sat at the small table in silence. Victoria's hand shook as she lifted the cup to her lips. "He knows where you live," she said quietly. "Probably. He'll come here." "Let him." She looked up sharply. "Ethan, you don't get it. Richard doesn't just make threats. He follows through. He has people who— I don't care." Ethan set his cup down, leaned forward. "You can't go back there. You know that, right?" "I know." Her voice cracked. "But I can't stay here either. Not if it puts you and Maya in danger." "Where else are you going to go?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The answer was obvious. She had nowhere. Before Ethan could say anything else, footsteps padded down the stairs. Maya appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair a tangled mess. She stopped when she saw Victoria, her eyes going wide. "Dad?" Ethan stood quickly. "Hey, sweetheart, this is Victoria. She's an old friend. She's staying with us for a little while." Maya looked between them, her expression skeptical in that way only kids could manage. "Why?" "She needed a place to stay." "Is she in trouble?" Victoria flinched. "No," Ethan said, maybe too quickly. "She just needed help, that's all." Maya studied Victoria for a long moment, then shrugged. "Okay, can I have cereal?" "Yeah, go ahead." Maya grabbed a bowl from the cabinet and started pouring Cheerios like nothing was wrong. Kids were good at that, accepting things adults spent hours overthinking. Victoria watched her, something unreadable crossing her face. "How old is she?" she asked quietly. 8. "She looks like you." Ethan smiled faintly. "Poor kid." Victoria didn't smile back. She just kept watching Maya, her expression tight. After breakfast, Maya headed upstairs to get dressed for school. Ethan walked her to the bus stop like he did every morning, and when he came back, Victoria was standing by the window, staring out at the street. "I need to call my lawyer," she said without turning around. "Okay. And I need to go through the files I grabbed. There might be something I can use." "Use for what?" "A restraining order. Evidence. Something." She finally looked at him. "I can't just hide here forever, Ethan. I have to fight back. Then we fight back." She shook her head. "This isn't your fight." "It is now." "Why?" Her voice rose, frustration bleeding through. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. We haven't spoken in over a decade. You have a daughter to think about. You should be telling me to leave, not—" "But I'm not," Ethan interrupted. "So stop asking me why and just accept the help." Victoria stared at him, her jaw tight. For a second he thought she might argue. Then she let out a shaky breath and nodded. "Okay." They spent the next hour going through the box she'd taken from the house. Most of it was documents, contracts, financial records, things Ethan didn't fully understand. But Victoria knew exactly what she was looking for. "Here," she said, pulling out a flash drive. "This has recordings." "Recordings of what?" "Conversations. Arguments. I started recording them a few months ago after he—" She stopped, her hands trembling. "After I realized things weren't going to get better." Ethan's chest tightened. "Does he know you have these?" "No. I hid the flash drive in the box. He never went through it. He didn't think I was smart enough to plan ahead." Her voice turned bitter. "That was his mistake." She plugged the drive into her laptop and pulled up a folder full of audio files. Ethan watched as she scrolled through them, her face pale. "I don't know if I can listen to these again," she admitted. "You don't have to. Not right now." "I do. If I'm going to build a case, I need to know what's on here." She clicked on the first file. Richard's voice filled the room, smooth and controlled, talking about some business deal. Nothing unusual. Then Victoria's voice quieter, asking a question. Richard's tone shifted immediately. "Don't interrupt me when I'm talking." I don't care what you were just. Learn to shut up and listen." The recording cut off. Victoria sat frozen, staring at the screen. Ethan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. She played another file. This one was worse. Richard's voice rising, sharp and cutting, telling her she was useless, that she'd be nothing without him, that she should be grateful he even bothered with her. Victoria's voice barely audible, trying to defend herself, only to be talked over again and again. When the file ended, Victoria closed the laptop and stood abruptly. "I need air." She walked out the back door before Ethan could stop her. He gave her a minute, then followed. She was sitting on the porch steps, her head in her hands. Ethan sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I stayed," she said quietly. "For 2 years I stayed. And I let him talk to me like that. It's not your fault." "Everyone says that, but it feels like it is." She looked up, her eyes red. "I built a company from nothing. I've negotiated deals with people who would eat me alive if I showed weakness. But with him, I froze. Every time." "That's what he wanted. He wore you down until you couldn't see a way out." "I'm supposed to be smarter than this." "It's not about being smart, it's about survival." She laughed bitterly. "Some survivor. I had to call you to save me." "You called someone. That took guts." She didn't answer, just stared at the ground, her shoulders hunched. "Victoria," Ethan said quietly, "you're still here. That means you're stronger than he ever gave you credit for." She turned to look at him, her expression raw. "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to. Not yet." They sat there in silence, the morning stretching out around them. Eventually, Victoria stood. "I need to call my lawyer," she said. "If I'm doing this, I'm doing it right." Ethan followed her back inside. She made the call in the living room, pacing as she spoke in clipped professional tones. Ethan stayed in the kitchen, giving her space, but he could hear snippets of the conversation. "Yes, I'm serious. I need a restraining order. No, I don't care how it looks. Just do it." When she hung up, she looked exhausted. "What did they say?" Ethan asked. "They'll file the paperwork today. We have a hearing in 3 days." She rubbed her face. "I have to testify. In front of him." "You don't have to do it alone. The lawyer said it would be better if I did. More credible. Screw credible. If you want someone there, I'll be there." She looked at him for a long moment. "You really mean that?" "Yeah, I do." Something shifted in her expression, gratitude maybe, or relief. She nodded. "Okay." The next 2 days passed in a strange, tense blur. Victoria stayed at the house, working through her files, preparing her testimony. Ethan went to work during the day, but he came home during lunch to check on her, and every time he walked through the door, he half expected to find Richard standing in his living room, but nothing happened. Maya adjusted faster than Ethan expected. She seemed to like having Victoria around, even if she didn't fully understand why she was there. At dinner the second night, Maya asked Victoria what she did for work. "I run a company," Victoria said. "Or I used to." "What kind of company?" "Tech. Software development." Maya's eyes lit up. "That's cool. Do you know how to code?" "A little." "Can you teach me?" Victoria smiled, the first real smile Ethan had seen from her in days. "Maybe. If your dad says it's okay." Maya turned to Ethan with hopeful eyes. He sighed. "Sure. Why not?" After dinner, Victoria and Maya sat at the kitchen table, Victoria pulling up a basic coding tutorial on her laptop. Ethan watched from the doorway, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. Later, after Maya went to bed, Victoria found him on the porch. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me stay, for not treating me like I'm broken." "You're not broken." "I feel like I am." Ethan turned to look at her. "You're here. You're fighting back. That's not broken. That's brave." She didn't say anything, just looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I used to think about you," she said suddenly. "After college. I'd see your name pop up on social media sometimes. You got married, had Maya. It looked like you built a good life." "I did, for a while." "What happened?" Ethan hesitated. "She left, said she didn't want to be a mom anymore, didn't want the life we'd built, so she walked away." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." He paused. "What about you? How'd you end up with Richard?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "He was charming, successful. He made me feel like I mattered, and then, slowly, he made me feel like I didn't. By the time I realized what was happening, I didn't know how to get out." "You're out now." "Am I?" She looked away. "The hearing's in 1 day. If the judge doesn't grant the restraining order, I'll have to go back, or run, and I don't know which is worse. The judge will grant it. You have the recordings. You have evidence." "Evidence doesn't always matter. Not when the other person has money and power." Ethan didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Richard's face, the way he'd smiled when he threatened Maya. He thought about Victoria, sitting in a courtroom, having to relive everything in front of a stranger. He thought about what would happen if they lost. At 2 a.m., he gave up and went downstairs. Victoria was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, her face illuminated by the screen. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. She shook her head. "I keep running through what I'm going to say, what he's going to say, how it's all going to fall apart. It won't." "You don't know that." "No, but I know you, and you don't give up." She looked at him, her eyes tired. "I feel like I've been giving up for 2 years." "Then tomorrow you stop." She closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. "What if I freeze? What if I get up there and I can't say any of it?" "Then you take a breath and try again. And if you still can't, I'll be there. You're not doing this alone." She nodded slowly. "Okay." They sat there in the quiet for a while, the house settling around them. Eventually, Victoria stood. "I should try to get some sleep." "Yeah, me too." But neither of them moved. "Ethan," she said quietly, "why didn't you ever say anything, back in college?" He blinked. "Say what?" "You know what?" He did. He'd known for 12 years. "Because you were going places," he said finally. "And I wasn't. You didn't need someone like me holding you back. That wasn't your choice to make." "Maybe not, but I made it anyway." She looked at him for a long moment, something sad flickering across her face. "For what it's worth," she said, "I would have said yes." Before he could respond, she turned and walked upstairs. Ethan stood there in the dark, her words echoing in his head. The morning of the hearing, Ethan woke up early and made breakfast. Victoria came downstairs dressed in a suit she'd borrowed from a friend, sharp, professional, the armor she used to wear every day. But her hands were shaking as she tried to button her jacket. "Here," Ethan said, stepping forward. "Let me." She let him, standing perfectly still as he fixed the buttons. When he was done, she looked up at him. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I know." "What if—" "Don't," he said gently. "Don't think about what if. Just think about right now, one step at a time. She nodded, her throat working. They drove to the courthouse in silence. Ethan parked, and they walked inside together, past security, through hallways that smelled like old paper and floor wax. Victoria's lawyer met them outside the courtroom, a sharp woman in her 50s named Margaret Chen who looked like she could dismantle someone with words alone. "You ready?" Margaret asked. "No," Victoria said. "Good. That means you're taking this seriously." Margaret glanced at Ethan. "You're the friend?" "Yeah." "Stay close. She's going to need you after this." They went inside. The courtroom was smaller than Ethan expected, wood-paneled and austere. Richard was already there, sitting with his own lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked bored. Richard didn't look at Victoria, just stared straight ahead, his expression calm. The judge entered and everyone stood. The hearing began. Margaret presented the case efficiently, laying out the timeline of abuse, the recordings, the evidence. Victoria sat at the table, her hands folded, her face pale. Then it was Richard's turn. His lawyer stood, smooth and polished, and began dismantling everything. He called Victoria unstable, claimed the recordings were taken out of context, suggested she was fabricating the whole thing to gain leverage in their relationship. "My client is a respected businessman," the lawyer said. "He has no history of violence. This is nothing more than a bitter ex-fiancé trying to damage his reputation." Margaret objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Then the judge asked Victoria to testify. She stood slowly, walked to the witness stand, and took the oath. Her voice was steady, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders. Margaret started with easy questions. How long had she known Richard? When did the relationship turn? What did he do? Victoria answered each one carefully, her voice quiet but clear. Then Richard's lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Hale," he said, his tone dripping with false sympathy, "you claim my client abused you, yet you stayed with him for 2 years. You accepted his gifts. You lived in his home. Why didn't you leave?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Because he made me believe I couldn't. Or because there was nothing to leave. Because this is a convenient story you've concocted now that the relationship has ended." "No. You're a successful businesswoman, Ms. Hale. A billionaire. Are you really asking this court to believe you were powerless?" Victoria's hands gripped the edge of the stand. "Yes. That's convenient. It's the truth." The lawyer smiled. "No further questions." Victoria stepped down, her face flushed. She walked back to the table and sat, her hands shaking. Then the judge asked Richard to testify. He stood, walked to the stand, and took the oath. His performance was flawless, calm, reasonable. He painted himself as the victim, a man who loved Victoria, who tried to help her, only to be accused of something he never did. "I never locked her out," he said, his voice steady. "She left on her own. I tried to call her to make sure she was safe, but she wouldn't answer. I've been worried sick." Ethan's hands curled into fists. Richard continued, his tone perfect. "I understand she's been under a lot of stress. Running a company is difficult. I think she just needs help." Margaret stood. "Mr. Donovan, are you suggesting Ms. Hale is mentally unstable?" "I'm suggesting she's overwhelmed, and I'm worried about her." "Is that why you destroyed her belongings?" Richard blinked, his mask slipping for just a second. "I didn't destroy anything. We have photos." "Then someone else did. Not me." Margaret pressed him, picking apart his story piece by piece. And slowly, cracks started to form. Richard's tone shifted, his answers getting sharper, more defensive. Then Margaret played one of the recordings. Richard's voice filled the courtroom, cold and cutting. "You're nothing without me. Don't forget that." The judge's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. Richard recovered quickly, but the damage was done. When the hearing ended, the judge took a 15-minute recess to deliberate. Ethan and Victoria waited in the hallway, neither of them speaking. Margaret paced, checking her phone. Finally, they were called back in. The judge looked at both parties, her expression unreadable. "After reviewing the evidence," she said, "I'm granting the restraining order. Mr. Donovan is to have no contact with Ms. Hale. He is to stay at least 500 feet away from her at all times. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Victoria's breath hitched, Richard's jaw tightened, but he didn't react otherwise. The judge dismissed them. Outside the courtroom, Victoria stopped in the hallway and pressed her back against the wall, her eyes closed. "It's over," she whispered. "Not yet," Margaret said. "He'll appeal. They always do. But for now, you're safe." Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. Margaret left, and Ethan walked Victoria to the truck. She didn't say anything until they were halfway home. "I can't believe we won," she said. You won. You did that." She shook her head. "We did." When they got back to the house, Maya was waiting on the porch with Mrs. Cho. The moment she saw them, she ran over. "Did it work?" she asked. Victoria smiled through her tears. "Yeah, it worked." Maya hugged her without hesitation, and Victoria froze for a second before hugging her back. That night, for the first time in days, the house felt quiet in a good way. Victoria helped Maya with her homework, and Ethan made dinner, and for a few hours everything felt almost normal. But late that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." Ethan stared at the screen, his stomach dropping. He deleted the message and didn't tell Victoria. But he didn't sleep either. The text message sat in Ethan's deleted folder like a ghost he couldn't bury. For 3 days, he said nothing. Victoria was finally starting to breathe again, sleeping through the night, laughing at Maya's jokes, looking less like she was bracing for impact every time a car drove past the house. He didn't want to take that away from her. Not yet. But on the 4th morning, everything changed. Ethan woke up to his phone ringing. He fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Margaret Chen. His stomach dropped. "Hello?" "Ethan, is Victoria with you?" Margaret's voice was tight. "Yeah, she's asleep. Why?" "Wake her up, now. There's something she needs to see." He sat up, his pulse quickening. "What happened?" "Just turn on the news. Channel 7. Ethan climbed out of bed and went downstairs, flipping on the TV in the living room. The morning news anchor was mid-sentence, her expression serious. Allegations surfaced late last night involving tech CEO Victoria Hale. Sources close to the situation claim Hale has been struggling with mental health issues for months, raising questions about her ability to lead her company. Her fiancé, businessman Richard Donovan, released a statement expressing concern for her well-being and calling the recent restraining order a desperate cry for help. The screen cut to Richard standing outside his lawyer's office, looking somber and concerned. He spoke directly to the camera, his voice calm and measured. "Victoria is someone I care about deeply. I'm worried about her. I think she's been under immense pressure, and it's affecting her judgment. I just want her to get the help she needs." Ethan felt his blood turn to ice. The anchor continued. Hale's company, Vanguard Technologies, has not yet released a statement. Sources say the board is meeting today to discuss her future with the organization. Footsteps on the stairs. Ethan turned to see Victoria standing in the doorway, still in her borrowed pajamas, her face pale. "What's going on?" she asked. Ethan muted the TV but didn't turn it off. She could still see Richard's face frozen on the screen. Her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her to the couch. "He's lying," she whispered. "I know." "The board. If they believe him." Her voice cracked. "That's my company. I built that from nothing. He can't just—" Her phone started ringing, then again, and again. She stared at it, her hands shaking. Ethan picked it up, glanced at the screen. 20 missed calls, dozens of texts, all from numbers she probably recognized, board members, investors, journalists. "Don't answer," he said. "I have to. If I don't say something, they'll think it's true." "Then we call Margaret first. Let her handle it." Victoria nodded numbly. Ethan dialed Margaret's number and put it on speaker. "Margaret, she's here." "Victoria, listen to me very carefully," Margaret said, her voice sharp. "Do not talk to anyone. Not the press, not your board, not even your assistant. Richard's team is spinning this as a mental breakdown. If you respond emotionally, you'll play right into their hands." "What am I supposed to do? Just let him destroy me?" "No, you're going to let me destroy him. But I need time. Can you give me that?" Victoria closed her eyes. "How much time?" 48 hours. I'm filing a defamation suit and requesting an emergency hearing. But until then, you stay quiet." "My company will still be there in 2 days. Trust me." Victoria didn't look like she trusted anything anymore, but she nodded. Okay. Margaret hung up. The silence in the room felt suffocating. Victoria stood abruptly, pacing. This is what he does. He doesn't just hurt you, he makes sure everyone else sees you as the problem. And by the time you try to defend yourself, no one believes you anymore. We have the restraining order, we have the recordings. And he has a PR team and a story people want to believe. Powerful man worried about unstable woman. It's easier than the truth. Ethan didn't argue because she was right. Victoria's phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. She answered before Ethan could stop her. Hello? A man's voice, cold and professional. Miss Hale, this is David Brennan from the Vanguard Board. We need to schedule an emergency meeting. When? Today, 2 p.m. We'll be discussing your position with the company. Victoria's jaw tightened. You mean you're firing me? We're discussing your future. Given the recent allegations from the man I have a restraining order against. We're aware of the situation, but the optics are concerning. Shareholders are nervous. We need to address this before it gets worse. I built that company, and we appreciate everything you've done, but right now we need to think about what's best for Vanguard. Victoria's hand clenched around the phone. I'll be there. She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stood. You're not going. I have to. They've already made up their minds. Walking into that room won't change anything. Maybe not, but I'm not going to let them take everything without a fight. Victoria, Salm, I know what you're going to say, that it's not worth it, that I should just let it go. But I can't. Her voice broke. That company is all I have left. Ethan wanted to tell her that wasn't true, that she had more than a company, but he could see the desperation in her eyes, the need to prove she wasn't broken. Then I'm coming with you, he said. You don't have to. I know. I'm coming anyway. They arrived at Vanguard's headquarters at 1:45 p.m. The building was glass and steel, towering and cold. Ethan had never been inside a place like this before. Everything gleamed. Everything felt designed to make you feel small. Victoria walked through the lobby like she owned it, because until today she had. Employees glanced at her as they passed, their expressions ranging from sympathy to discomfort. No one said hello. They took the elevator to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, a young woman in a press suit was waiting. Ms. Hale, the board is ready for you. Victoria nodded. She glanced at Ethan. Wait here, she said quietly. Victoria, please. I need to do this alone. He wanted to argue, but the look on her face stopped him. So he nodded and watched her walk down the hallway, her shoulders straight, her head high. The conference room door closed behind her. Ethan sat in the waiting area, a sleek chair that was more art than furniture, and stared at the ceiling. 20 minutes passed, then 30. He could hear muffled voices through the walls, but couldn't make out words. Then the door opened. Victoria walked out, her face blank. She didn't look at him, just kept walking toward the elevator. Ethan followed. They didn't speak until they were back in the truck, the building shrinking in the rearview mirror. They voted me out, Victoria said, her voice flat. Effective immediately. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. They can't do that. They just did. Said it was in the best interest of the company, that I could stay on as a consultant, but I'd no longer have decision-making power. That's not legal. It is when you're the CEO and the board loses confidence. They were nice about it, said they appreciated my contributions, that they hoped I'd get the help I needed. She laughed bitterly. They made it sound like they were doing me a favor. Margaret will fight this. Margaret can't undo what's already done. Richard won. He made me look unstable, and now I've lost the one thing I had left. Her voice cracked. He took everything. Ethan pulled over, the truck idling on the shoulder. He turned to face her. He didn't take everything, he said quietly. What's left, Ethan? My reputation? Gone. My company? Gone. My life? I'm living in your guest room because I have nowhere else to go. Tears streamed down her face. I used to be someone. Now I'm just, you're still someone. No, I'm the cautionary tale. The woman who couldn't handle the pressure. The one who made it all up.
Ethan reached over, took her hand. You didn't make anything up, and the people who matter know that. She pulled her hand away. The people who matter just fired me. She turned to look out the window, her arms wrapped around herself. Ethan didn't know what else to say, so he just drove. When they got home, Maya was at a friend's house. The silence in the empty house felt worse than the noise. Victoria went straight to the guest room and closed the door. Ethan stood in the hallway, staring at the wood, wanting to knock but not knowing what he'd say if he did. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Told you it wasn't over. Ethan deleted it. Then he called Margaret. They fired her, he said. I know, I'm already drafting a wrongful termination suit. How long will that take? Months? Maybe years. She doesn't have years. Then tell her to be patient.
She's falling apart. Margaret sighed. Ethan, I'm doing everything I can, but Richard has resources. He's playing a long game and he's good at it. The best thing Victoria can do right now is stay quiet and let the legal process work. And if that doesn't work, then we figure out plan B. Ethan hung up. He stared at his phone, at the deleted messages, and made a decision he knew was probably stupid. He called the unknown number back. It rang twice before Richard answered. Ethan Cole, Richard said, his voice smooth. I was wondering when you'd reach out. What do you want? I think the better question is, what do you want? You've inserted yourself into a situation you don't understand, and now you're in over your head. I understand enough. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're a single father with a landscaping business playing hero for a woman who doesn't need saving. She needs help. Professional help. She has a restraining order against you. A piece of paper that means nothing. Victoria's spiraling, Ethan, and instead of getting her the help she needs, you're enabling her delusions. The only delusion here is you thinking you're going to get away with this. Richard laughed. I already have. Her company's gone. Her credibility's shot. And in a few weeks, when the restraining order expires and she realizes she has no one left, she'll come back to me. She always does. Not this time. We'll see. In the meantime, I'd suggest you focus on your own life. Your daughter, for instance. Maya, right? Sweet kid. It'd be a shame if something happened to disrupt her world. Ethan's blood ran cold. You go near her. I won't have to. You'll push Victoria away all on your own because eventually you'll realize she's not worth the risk. The line went dead. Ethan sat there, his hands shaking. He wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, he set it down carefully and took a long breath. Richard was wrong. He had to be. That night, Victoria didn't come out of her room. Ethan knocked twice, but she didn't answer. He left a plate of food outside the door and went to bed. He didn't sleep. The next morning, Ethan found Victoria in the kitchen, dressed and composed, staring at her laptop. What are you doing? He asked. Looking for apartments. Victoria, I can't stay here, Ethan. It's not fair to you or Maya. I'll find somewhere temporary until I figure things out. You don't have to leave. Yes, I do. She closed the laptop. Richard was right about one thing. I'm dragging you into this, and it's only going to get worse. I don't care. Well, I do. Her voice was firm. I've already lost everything. I'm not going to let you lose anything because of me. You haven't lost everything, haven't I? She gestured around. I have no job, no company, no money coming in. My name is Mud. What exactly do I have left? You have people who care about you. That's not enough. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. Before he could respond, Maya came downstairs, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Morning, she said brightly. Then she looked at Victoria. Are you okay? Victoria forced a smile. Yeah, sweetheart, I'm fine. Maya didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Dad, can you drive me to school? Mrs. Cho's sick. Yeah, give me a sec. Ethan grabbed his keys, glancing back at Victoria. She was staring at the table, her hands folded. We'll talk when I get back, he said. She didn't respond. Ethan drove Maya to school in silence, his mind racing. When they pulled up to the curb, Maya didn't get out right away. Dad? Yeah? Is Victoria leaving? Ethan's chest tightened. Why do you think that? Because she looks like Mom did before she left. He didn't know what to say to that. Maya opened the door, then paused. I like her. I hope she stays. She got out and walked toward the school, leaving Ethan sitting there with the weight of her words pressing down on him. When he got back to the house, Victoria was gone. Her duffel bag was missing, the laptop, the borrowed clothes folded neatly on the bed. On the kitchen table was a note. "Thank you for everything. I'm sorry. V." Ethan stared at it, his stomach dropping. He grabbed his phone and called her. It went straight to voicemail. He called again and again. Nothing. He stood there, the note crumpling in his hand, and realized what Richard had meant. Victoria wasn't coming back. And this time, Ethan didn't know how to find her. The house felt empty in a way it hadn't since his ex-wife left. Ethan spent the rest of the day calling everyone he could think of. Margaret, Victoria's assistant, even the front desk at Vanguard. No one had seen her. No one knew where she'd gone. Margaret was furious. "She needs to stay visible," she snapped over the phone. "Disappearing makes her look guilty." "She's not guilty. She's scared." "Then you need to find her and convince her to come back." "I don't know where she is." "Figure it out." Ethan hung up and sat on the couch, his head in his hands. Maya came home from school and immediately noticed the absence. "Where's Victoria?" "She left." "Why?" "Because she thought it was the right thing to do." "That's stupid." Ethan almost laughed. "Yeah, it is." Maya sat beside him. "Are you going to find her?" "I don't know where to look." "She can't have gone far. She doesn't have a car." Ethan looked at his daughter, something clicking into place. "You're right." He grabbed his keys. "Where are you going?" Maya asked. "To find her." He started with the obvious places, the bus station, the train depot, cheap hotels near the highway. Nothing. Then he tried the places that made less sense but felt right. The park where she used to run in college, the coffee shop she mentioned once in passing. Still nothing. It was almost dark when he pulled into the parking lot of a small motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be found. He walked into the office, a cramped space that smelled like cigarettes and bleach. The clerk looked up from his phone. "Help you?" "I'm looking for someone." "A woman. Checked in today, probably." The clerk's expression didn't change. "Can't give out guest information." Ethan pulled out his wallet, set 220s on the counter. "I'm not a cop. I'm a friend. I just need to know if she's here." The clerk looked at the money, then back at Ethan. "What's she look like?" "Tall? Dark hair? Probably looked like she'd been crying." The clerk pocketed the cash. "Room 12, end of the row." Ethan walked back outside, his heart pounding. He found the room, hesitated, then knocked. "Victoria, it's me." Silence. "I know you're in there. Please, just talk to me." More silence. Then the door cracked open. Victoria stood there, her eyes red, her face puffy. She looked like she hadn't stopped crying since she left. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you." "Ethan, you don't get to just leave, not like this." "Yes, I do. This is my mess, not yours. It stopped being just yours the second you called me." She shook her head. "I'm poison right now. Everything I touch falls apart. I won't do that to you." "You're not poison. You're hurt. There's a difference." "Richard called you, didn't he?" It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't deny it. "Yeah, he did. And he threatened Maya." "Yeah." Victoria's face crumpled. "That's why I left. I won't let him hurt her because of me. He's not going to hurt her. He's bluffing. You don't know that. And you don't know that he's not." They stood there in the doorway, the space between them feeling like miles. "Come back," Ethan said quietly. "Please." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I'm scared." Her voice broke. "I'm scared that you're going to wake up one day and realize I'm not worth it, that I'm too broken, too complicated, too much. And I can't handle that, not again." Ethan stepped closer. "Victoria, look at me." She did, tears streaming down her face. "You're worth it," he said, "and I'm not going anywhere." She shook her head, but she didn't pull away when he reached for her hand. "Come home," he said. She stared at him, her breath hitching. Then, finally, she nodded. They drove back in silence, but this time it felt different, less like defeat, more like relief. When they walked through the door, Maya was waiting on the couch.
She jumped up when she saw Victoria. "You came back." Victoria smiled through her tears. "Yeah, I did." Maya hugged her, and Victoria held on like she was afraid to let go. That night, after Maya went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch. The air was cold, but neither of them moved to go inside. "Richard's not going to stop," Victoria said quietly. "I know. He'll keep pushing until one of us breaks. Then we don't break." She looked at him. "How do you stay so calm?" "I'm not calm. I'm just too stubborn to quit." She laughed, a real laugh this time. They sat there in the dark, the world quiet around them. And for the first time in weeks, Victoria felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. The morning after Victoria came back, Ethan woke to the smell of coffee and something burning. He stumbled downstairs to find Victoria standing at the stove, waving a dish towel at a pan of what used to be scrambled eggs. "I was trying to help," she said, looking embarrassed. Maya was at the table, eating cereal and trying not to laugh. "It's the thought that counts," Ethan said, taking the pan from her. He scraped the blackened eggs into the trash. "How about toast instead? I can manage toast." She couldn't. The first piece came out charred on one side and raw on the other. But she tried again, and by the third attempt, she had something edible. "Success," she announced, holding up the toast like a trophy. Maya clapped. "You're getting better." Victoria smiled, and for a moment, the weight she'd been carrying seemed lighter. After Maya left for school, the house settled into an uneasy quiet. Victoria sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, scrolling through news articles about herself. Each headline was worse than the last. Ethan watched her face grow tighter with every click. "You should stop reading those," he said. "I need to know what people are saying." "Why? It's all garbage." "Because it's my life they're destroying." She closed the laptop harder than necessary. "Do you know what the worst part is? Half the comments are from people I know, people I worked with, and they're all saying the same thing, that I must have done something to deserve this." "They don't know what happened." "Exactly. They don't know. But they've already made up their minds." Ethan poured her more coffee, even though her cup was still half full. He didn't know what else to do. Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted. "It's Margaret," she answered, putting it on speaker. "Victoria, we have a problem," Margaret said without preamble. "Richard's team filed a countersuit. They're claiming you violated the restraining order." Victoria's face went pale. "What? I haven't been anywhere near him. They're saying you sent threatening emails, 3 of them, over the last 2 days." "I didn't send any emails. I haven't even logged into my account since—" She stopped. "He has access to my email." "He always did. He must have sent them himself." "Can you prove that?" "I can prove I wasn't the one typing. My laptop was here the whole time. Check the IP address." "I will. But this complicates things. The judge is going to want to see evidence, and until we can prove these emails are fake, the restraining order might be revoked." "When's the hearing?" "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Can you be there?" Victoria looked at Ethan. He nodded. "Yeah, I'll be there." Margaret hung up. Victoria set the phone down and pressed her hands to her face. "He's so far ahead of me," she said. "Every time I think I'm catching up, he's already 3 steps further. Then we stop chasing him and start making him chase us." She looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means we go on the offensive, stop reacting to what he does, and start hitting back." "With what?" "I don't have his resources. I don't have his connections. You have the truth, and you have people who believe you." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded. That afternoon, Ethan called in a favor. His friend Danny worked in IT for a mid-sized firm downtown. If anyone could trace the source of those emails, it was him. They met at a coffee shop. Danny hunched over Victoria's laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Okay," Danny said after 20 minutes. "These emails were definitely sent from your account, but the IP address doesn't match your home network or your phone. It's coming from—" He paused, frowning. "This is weird. It's bouncing through a VPN, but the original location traces back to an office building downtown. Let me cross-reference." He pulled up a map. The pin dropped on a high-rise Ethan recognized, Richard's company headquarters. "Got him," Danny said, grinning. "Whoever sent these was sitting in that building, and unless you've got a secret office there—" I don't, Victoria said. But Richard does. Danny saved the data to a flash drive and handed it to her. This should hold up in court. You're welcome. Victoria hugged him, which seemed to surprise both of them. Thank you, she said. Just doing my job. Well, not my job, but you know what I mean. They left the coffee shop with the evidence tucked safely in Victoria's bag. For the first time in days, Ethan saw something like hope in her eyes. We might actually win this, she said. We will win this. She smiled. It didn't last long. When they got back to the house, there was a car in the driveway, a black sedan with tinted windows. Ethan's stomach dropped. Stay here, he said. Ethan, just stay in the truck. He got out, walking slowly toward the car. The driver's side door opened and a man stepped out. Not Richard. Someone Ethan didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. Ethan Cole? The man asked. Who's asking? The man reached into his jacket. Ethan tensed, but the man pulled out a business card. My name is James Friedman. I'm an attorney. I represent Richard Donovan. Great. Get off my property. I'm here to deliver a message. Mr. Donovan is prepared to settle this matter quietly. He's willing to drop the countersuit and leave Ms. Hale alone, provided she agrees to certain terms. What terms? She signs an NDA. She retracts her statements about Mr. Donovan, and she stays away from him and his associates permanently. In other words, she lets him get away with everything. In other words, she moves on with her life. Friedman's expression didn't change. Mr. Donovan is a generous man. He understands Ms. Hale has been under stress. He's willing to forgive her behavior if she's willing to do the same. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're serious? Very. This is a one-time offer. If she refuses, Mr. Donovan will pursue every legal avenue available to protect his reputation. And I assure you, he has the resources to make that process very unpleasant for everyone involved. She's not signing anything. Friedman tilted his head. That's not your decision to make. Yeah, it is. Now get out of here before I call the cops. Friedman didn't move. You should think carefully about this, Mr. Cole. You have a daughter, a business, a life. Ms. Hale's problems don't have to become yours. Ethan stepped closer. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you advice, free of charge. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Friedman got back in his car and drove away. Victoria was out of the truck before Ethan could turn around. What did he want? Richard's offering a deal. You drop everything, sign an NDA, and he leaves you alone. And if I don't? Then he keeps coming. Victoria's jaw tightened. I'm not signing. I know. He thinks he can just buy me off like I'm... She stopped, her hands curling into fists. I'm not giving him that. Good. They stood there in the driveway, the sun starting to dip below the horizon. Ethan could see the exhaustion in her face, the way her shoulders sagged. Come on, he said. Let's go inside. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. Ethan found her on the couch at 2 a.m., staring at the dark TV screen. You okay? He asked. I keep thinking about tomorrow. What if the judge doesn't believe us? What if Richard's lawyer twists everything again? Then we try something else. There might not be a something else. Ethan sat beside her. You can't think like that. Why not? It's realistic. It's defeatist. There's a difference. She looked at him. How do you do it? How do you stay so calm when everything's falling apart? I don't. I just don't let you see it. She smiled faintly. That's not reassuring. Wasn't meant to be. They sat in the dark for a while, not talking. Finally, Victoria spoke. When this is over, if it's ever over, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have a company. I don't have a plan. I don't even know who I am without all of that. You'll figure it out. Will I? Yeah, because you're stubborn and smart and you don't give up. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I feel like I've been giving up for 2 years. Then tomorrow, you stop. The courthouse was packed. Journalists lined the steps outside, cameras ready. Ethan held Victoria's arm as they pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions. Inside, the courtroom felt colder than before. Richard was already seated, his lawyer beside him, both looking calm and confident. Richard glanced at Victoria and smiled. She didn't smile back. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The hearing began. Margaret presented the evidence first. The IP address data. The proof that the emails hadn't come from Victoria's devices. Richard's lawyer objected, claiming the data could have been falsified. The judge listened, her expression unreadable. Then Richard's lawyer called a witness, a woman Ethan didn't recognize. She took the stand, swore the oath, and began to speak. "I worked as Ms. Hale's assistant for 6 months," the woman said. "During that time, I witnessed several instances of erratic behavior. She would send emails late at night, sometimes aggressive in tone. She was paranoid, convinced people were working against her." Victoria's hands clenched in her lap. "Did she ever mention Mr. Donovan?" Richard's lawyer asked. "Yes. She blamed him for things that weren't his fault. She said he was controlling, but from what I saw, he was just trying to help her." Margaret stood. "Objection. The witness is speculating." "Sustained," the judge said. But the damage was done. When the woman stepped down, Margaret called Victoria to the stand. Victoria walked slowly, her face pale. She took the oath and sat. Margaret started with soft questions, easing her in. Then she asked about the emails. "I didn't send them," Victoria said clearly. "Richard had access to my accounts. He's used that access before to monitor my communication. He could have easily sent those emails himself." "Can you prove that?" "The IP address proves I wasn't the one who sent them, and I have recordings of Richard admitting he monitors my accounts." Margaret played one of the recordings. Richard's voice filled the courtroom, calm and cold. "I need to know who you're talking to. It's for your own good." The judge's expression shifted slightly. Richard's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He approached Victoria with a sympathetic smile. "Ms.
Hale, you've been under a lot of stress lately, haven't you?" "Yes." "You've lost your position at your company. You've been living with a man you barely know. Your life has been turned upside down. Because of Richard. Or because of choices you've made. Ms. Hale, isn't it possible that you're projecting your own instability onto my client?" "No." "Isn't it possible that these recordings are taken out of context? That Mr. Donovan was simply concerned for your well-being?" "No."
"He wasn't concerned. He was controlling." "That's your interpretation." "It's the truth." The lawyer smiled. "No further questions." Victoria stepped down, her hands shaking. Ethan wanted to go to her, but he had to stay in his seat. The judge called for a recess, 15 minutes. Ethan and Victoria waited in the hallway, neither of them speaking. Margaret was on her phone, pacing. "What do you think?" Victoria asked quietly. "I think it could go either way." "That's not comforting."
"I'm not in the business of comfort. I'm in the business of winning." When they were called back in, the judge looked at both parties. "I've reviewed the evidence," she said. "The IP address data is compelling, and it raises serious questions about who actually sent those emails. However, the testimony regarding Ms. Hale's behavior also raises concerns." Victoria's face went pale. "That said," the judge continued, "I'm not convinced that Ms. Hale violated the restraining order."
"The evidence suggests someone with access to her account sent those emails, and given Mr. Donovan's admitted history of monitoring her communication, I find it more likely that he or someone acting on his behalf sent them." Richard's jaw tightened. "The countersuit is dismissed," the judge said. "The restraining order remains in effect. Mr. Donovan, you are to have no contact with Miss Hale, directly or indirectly. If any further incidents occur, I will not be as lenient." She banged the gavel. Victoria's breath hitched. Ethan saw her shoulders drop, relief flooding through her. Margaret allowed herself a small smile. Richard stood, his face carefully blank, and walked out without a word. But Ethan saw the fury in his eyes. Outside the courthouse, the journalists swarmed again. This time, Margaret stepped forward and gave a brief statement. "Today's ruling confirms what we've known all along. Ms. Hale is the victim in this situation. We look forward to pursuing further legal action to hold Mr. Donovan accountable for his behavior." The questions came fast, but Margaret waved them off and guided Victoria toward the car. They didn't speak until they were blocks away from the courthouse. "We won," Victoria said, her voice small. "You won," Margaret corrected. "You stood up there and told the truth. That's what made the difference." Victoria didn't respond. She just stared out the window. When they got back to Ethan's house, Victoria went straight to the guest room and closed the door. Ethan gave her space, cleaning up the kitchen, checking his phone. Maya would be home soon. An hour later, Victoria emerged. Her eyes were red, but she looked calmer. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me." "I never would." She crossed the room and hugged him. Ethan froze for a second, then hugged her back. "I don't know what happens next," she said quietly. "Neither do I, but we'll figure it out." She pulled back, looking up at him. "I need to start rebuilding. I can't just hide here forever." "You're not hiding. You're regrouping." "It feels like hiding." "Then what do you want to do?" She hesitated. "I want to help people. Other people going through what I went through. I want to use what happened to me for something good." "That's a good start. Is it enough?" "It's more than enough." That night, Maya made dinner, or tried to. She insisted on making spaghetti, which turned into a chaotic mess of boiling water, too much sauce, and noodles stuck to the ceiling. But they ate it anyway, laughing at the disaster. After Maya went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch again. It was becoming a routine. "Do you think he'll stop?" Victoria asked. "Richard, do you think he'll actually leave me alone?" "I don't know." "That's honest." "I'm trying to be." She looked at him. "What if he doesn't? What if this keeps going?" "Then we keep fighting." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." She smiled sadly. "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but it's worth it." They sat in silence, the night settling around them. For the first time in weeks, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. And for now, that was enough. Over the next few days, life found a rhythm. Victoria started making calls, reaching out to organizations that helped abuse survivors. She volunteered, shared her story cautiously, and began to feel like she had a purpose again. Ethan went back to work. Though he checked in with her throughout the day, Maya adjusted, accepting Victoria as a fixture in their lives without question. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still had nightmares. Ethan still checked the locks twice every night, but they were moving forward. One evening, Victoria came downstairs with her laptop. "I've been thinking," she said, "about starting a foundation for people leaving abusive relationships, help with legal fees, housing, job placement, things I wish I'd had." "That's a great idea." "It's going to take time and money I don't really have right now." "You'll figure it out." She smiled. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She set the laptop down and sat beside him on the couch. "I don't know if I ever said this properly, but thank you for everything. For picking up the phone that night, for not walking away when you should have." "I wasn't going to walk away." "Why not?" Ethan looked at her. "Because 12 years ago I let you walk away. I wasn't going to make that mistake twice." Victoria's breath caught. "Ethan, I'm not saying this to make things complicated. I'm just saying I care about you. I always have." She stared at him, her eyes glistening. "I care about you too." They sat there, the space between them charged with something neither of them knew how to name. Then Maya's voice called from upstairs. "Dad, I need help with my homework." The moment broke. Ethan stood, giving Victoria a small smile. "Duty calls." She nodded, watching him go. Later that night, after Maya was asleep, Victoria found Ethan in the kitchen. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began. "Victoria, you don't have to Let me finish." She took a breath. "I'm not ready for anything right now. I'm still figuring out who I am without Richard, without the company, without all of it. But I want you to know that when I'm ready, I hope you're still here." Ethan's chest tightened. "I'm not going anywhere." She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Good." She kissed him on the cheek and went upstairs. Ethan stood there, his heart pounding, and allowed himself to hope. The restraining order held. Richard stayed away. Weeks passed without incident. Victoria threw herself into planning the foundation. She met with lawyers, accountants, potential donors. Slowly, the project took shape. Ethan watched her come back to life, piece by piece. She laughed more, slept better, started looking forward instead of back. One Saturday morning, Victoria came downstairs with an envelope. "What's that?" Ethan asked. "Settlement offer from Vanguard. They're offering me a buyout for my shares." "Is it fair?" "It's more than fair. It's generous." Are you going to take it?" She hesitated.
I don't know. Part of me wants to fight for the company, but another part of me thinks maybe it's time to let it go. What does your gut say? She smiled. My gut says I've spent enough time fighting for things that don't matter. Maybe it's time to focus on what does. Then do that. She signed the papers that afternoon. The money arrived 2 weeks later. Victoria stared at the bank statement, the number almost surreal.
I can start the foundation, she said quietly. I can actually do this. You can do anything you want. She looked at him. I want to stay. What? Here, in this town, with you and Maya, if that's okay. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Yeah, that's more than okay. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Life settled into something that almost felt normal. Victoria found an apartment nearby, but spent most of her time at Ethan's house. She and Maya grew closer, cooking together, studying together, laughing at bad movies. Ethan found himself looking forward to coming home, to the noise, the chaos, the feeling of not being alone. One night, after Maya went to bed, Victoria and Ethan sat on the porch. It was cold, the first real bite of winter in the air. I've been thinking, Victoria said. About? About what you said. About caring about me. Ethan's pulse quickened. Yeah? I think I'm ready now. To try. He looked at her, saw the vulnerability in her eyes. Are you sure? No, but I want to be. He reached for her hand. She took it. We'll take it slow, he said. Okay. They sat there, fingers intertwined, the future uncertain but no longer terrifying. And for the first time in a long time, Victoria felt safe. The first few weeks were awkward in the way new things always were. Victoria would reach for Ethan's hand and then pull back, second-guessing herself. Ethan would start to say something, then stop, unsure if it was too much too soon. They moved around each other like people learning to dance, stepping on toes, apologizing, trying again. Maya noticed but didn't comment. She just watched them with the kind of knowing look that made Ethan wonder when his 8-year-old daughter had become so perceptive. One morning, Victoria came downstairs to find Maya at the kitchen table, working on a school project about heroes. Who are you writing about? Victoria asked, pouring coffee. You, Maya said without looking up. Victoria nearly dropped the mug. What? We're supposed to write about someone who did something brave. You left someone who was mean to you and started over. That's brave. Victoria sat down slowly. Maya, I'm not a hero. Why not? Because heroes don't fall apart. They don't run away. They don't... My teacher says heroes are just regular people who do hard things even when they're scared. Maya looked up. Were you scared? Yeah, I was terrified. But you did it anyway. Victoria's throat tightened. Yeah, I did. Then you're a hero. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. Thank you. That afternoon, Victoria got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Ms. Hale? A woman's voice, hesitant. My name is Sarah Bennett. I saw an interview you did last week about your foundation. Yes? I need help. My husband, he's like the man you described. And I don't know how to leave. Victoria's heart clenched. Where are you right now? I'm at work. He doesn't know I'm calling. Okay. Listen to me. You're going to be okay. I'm going to help you. She spent the next hour on the phone, walking Sarah through options, connecting her with resources, giving her the number for a safe house. When she hung up, her hands were shaking. Ethan found her sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. What happened? He asked. A woman called. She needs help getting away from her husband. Did you help her? I tried. I gave her resources. But I don't know if she'll actually leave. Most people don't, not the first time. Did you? The first time you thought about leaving Richard? Victoria shook her head. No, I thought about it 100 times before I actually did it. Then you gave her what she needed, hope, and a way out when she's ready. Victoria looked at him. What if she's not ready? What if he hurts her before she can leave? You can't control that. All you can do is be there when she needs you. It's not enough. It's more than she had yesterday. Victoria nodded slowly, but Ethan could see the weight settling on her shoulders. This was going to be hard. Helping people meant carrying pieces of their pain, and Victoria was already carrying so much of her own. The foundation officially launched in early December. Victoria rented a small office downtown, hired 2 staff members, and started taking calls. The demand was overwhelming. Women, and some men, reaching out, desperate for help, for someone who understood. Victoria threw herself into the work. Some days she came home energized, telling Ethan about someone they'd helped find housing or legal representation. Other days she came home silent, the stories too heavy to repeat. Ethan learned to read the difference. On the good days, he let her talk. On the bad days, he just held her. One evening, in mid-December, Victoria came home looking shaken.
"What happened?" Ethan asked. "One of the women we've been helping, her ex found her. He showed up at her work. The police escorted him out, but she's terrified. She wants to leave the state, but she doesn't have the money. Can the foundation help?" "We can cover some of it, but relocation is expensive. Housing deposits, moving costs, first month's rent. It adds up fast." "How much does she need?" $5,000. Maybe more." Ethan didn't hesitate. "I have some savings. It's not much, but..." "Ethan, no. You can't just give away your savings." "Why not? You're using your settlement to fund the foundation. This isn't any different." "That's my money. You have Maya to think about. And you're helping people who need it more than I need a new roof or whatever I was saving for. Let me do this." Victoria stared at him, her eyes glistening. "You're serious?" "Yeah." She crossed the room and kissed him, not on the cheek this time. A real kiss, soft and tentative, and full of everything neither of them knew how to say. When she pulled back, she was crying. "Thank you," she whispered. "Any time." Christmas came quietly. Victoria bought Maya a coding kit she'd been eyeing for months. Maya made Victoria a card with glitter and stickers that said, "Best bonus mom ever." Ethan cooked a turkey that was slightly dry but edible, and they ate together, laughing at bad jokes and watching Maya's favorite movie. It felt like a family, a real one. That night, after Maya went to bed, Victoria and Ethan sat by the small Christmas tree in the living room, the lights casting soft colors across the walls. "This is the best Christmas I've had in years," Victoria said. "Even with the dry turkey?" "Especially with the dry turkey." Ethan smiled. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too." She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being. Then Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted. "What?" Ethan asked. "It's Margaret. She says Richard's lawyer reached out. He wants to settle." "Settle what?" "Everything. The defamation suit, the wrongful termination case. He's offering a public apology and a financial settlement." Ethan sat up. "Why now?" "I don't know. Margaret says it's substantial, enough to fund the foundation for years. Do you trust it?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "No, but I want to hear what they're offering." They met with Margaret the next day. She laid out the terms. Richard would issue a public statement admitting he'd been controlling and acknowledging the harm he'd caused. He'd pay a settlement of $2 million. In exchange, Victoria would agree not to pursue any further legal action. "What's the catch?" Victoria asked. "There's always a catch," Margaret said. "But, son..." "He wants you to agree to a mutual non-disparagement clause. You can't talk about him publicly, and he won't talk about you. So he gets to control the narrative one last time." "In a way, yes. But you'd also get closure and the money to do real good." Victoria looked at Ethan. "What do you think?" "I think it's your decision." "That's not helpful." "Okay. Then I think you should ask yourself what you want more, revenge or peace." Victoria flinched at the word revenge, but she didn't deny it. "I want him to suffer the way he made me suffer." "And will this settlement make that happen?" "No." "Then what will it do?" She thought for a long moment. "It'll give me the resources to help other people, and it'll let me move on." "Then you have your answer." Victoria turned to Margaret. "Tell them I'll take it, but I want the apology in writing, and I want it public. No backroom deals." Margaret smiled. "Done." The settlement was finalized in January.
Richard's statement was published in the business section of the major papers, carefully worded but clear. He acknowledged his behavior had been harmful and expressed regret. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was something. The money hit Victoria's foundation account a week later. She stared at the balance, the number almost surreal. "I can actually do this," she said to Ethan. "I can help hundreds of people." "You already were helping people. Now you can just help more." She nodded, but he could see the emotion in her eyes. This wasn't just about the money. It was about taking something broken and building something good from it. Over the next few months, the foundation grew. They opened a second office, hired more staff, partnered with shelters and legal aid organizations. Victoria's name started appearing in articles again, not as the woman who'd been broken, but as someone who was building something meaningful. She did interviews, speaking carefully about her experience without naming Richard directly, honoring the non-disparagement clause while still telling her story. People listened. Donations came in. The foundation expanded. But the work took its toll. Victoria was exhausted, running on fumes and caffeine, pushing herself harder than she should. One night, Ethan found her asleep at the kitchen table, her laptop still open, coffee gone cold. He gently closed the laptop and draped a blanket over her shoulders. She woke with a start. "What time is it?" "Almost midnight. You fell asleep working." She rubbed her face. "I have so much to do. The Denver office opens next month, and I still need to—" "Victoria, you need to rest." "I can't. There are people depending on me. And those people need you healthy, not burned out." She looked at him, her eyes tired. "I don't know how to slow down." "Then let me help you." "How?" "By reminding you that you don't have to do this alone." She stood, walked into his arms, and let herself lean on him, really lean, not the careful, tentative way she usually did. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I mess this up? What if I can't help everyone who needs it?" "You won't be able to help everyone. That's not failure. That's reality." "It feels like failure." "Then you're setting an impossible standard. Help who you can. That's enough." She nodded against his chest, and they stood there in the quiet kitchen until she stopped shaking. Spring came slowly. The foundation stabilized, finding a rhythm that didn't require Victoria to work 18-hour days. She hired a deputy director, someone who could share the load, and started taking weekends off. She and Ethan fell into an easy routine, dinners together, movie nights with Maya, long walks on Saturday mornings. It wasn't dramatic or sweeping. It was just life, steady and good. One evening in April, Victoria was helping Maya with her math homework when Maya asked, "Are you going to marry my dad?" Victoria's pen froze mid-equation. "What?" "You guys act like you're married. You're here all the time. You cook together. You do that gross thing where you stare at each other when you think I'm not looking." Victoria's face flushed. "Maya, I'm just asking. Because if you are, I think it's cool. I like you. I like you too." "But your dad and I were just dating," Maya said. "I know, but you're going to get married eventually, right?" "I don't know. We haven't really talked about it." "Why not?" "Because it's complicated." Maya rolled her eyes. "Adults always say that." That night, after Maya went to bed, Victoria told Ethan about the conversation. "She asked if we were getting married," Victoria said, her voice careful. Ethan looked up from the book he was reading. "What did you say?" "That we haven't talked about it." "Do you want to talk about it?" Victoria sat beside him on the couch. "I don't know. I mean, I never thought I'd get married. After Richard, the whole idea felt tainted. But with you, it doesn't feel like that." "What does it feel like?" "Safe, real, like something I could actually want." Ethan set the book down. "I'm not asking you to decide anything right now. But for what it's worth, I want this. You, me, Maya. I want all of it." Victoria's breath hitched. "Even with all my baggage?" "Especially with your baggage. It made you who you are." She kissed him, and this time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Just the two of them, finally on the same page. Summer brought changes. Victoria moved out of her apartment and into Ethan's house officially. Maya helped her unpack, claiming the closet space with the efficiency of a seasoned negotiator. The foundation continued to grow. They helped their 100th client in June, a milestone Victoria marked with quiet gratitude rather than fanfare. Ethan's business picked up, enough that he hired 2 more crew members. Life felt full in a way it hadn't in years. But in late July, everything shifted again. Victoria got a call from Margaret. "Richard's dead," Margaret said without preamble. Victoria's world tilted. "What?" "Car accident. Last night. He was alone." Victoria sat down hard. "Are you sure?" "I'm looking at the police report right now." "How do I... What am I supposed to..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "You don't have to feel anything," Margaret said gently. "There's no right way to react to this." After she hung up, Victoria sat in stunned silence. Ethan found her on the porch, staring at nothing. "What happened?" he asked. "Richard's dead." Ethan sat beside her. "Are you okay?" "I don't know. I thought I'd feel... I don't know. Relief? Satisfaction? But I just feel empty." "That's normal." "Is it? He made my life hell for 2 years and now he's gone. And I don't feel anything." "You feel something. You just don't know what it is yet." She leaned against him. "I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to lose everything the way I did, but I didn't want him dead." "I know." They sat there as the sun set, the sky turning shades of orange and pink. Eventually, Victoria spoke again. "I need to let it go. All of it. The anger, the pain, the need for him to pay. He's gone. And I'm still here. And I get to decide what happens next." "What do you want to happen?" She looked at him. "I want to be happy. Really happy. Not just surviving, not just rebuilding. Actually happy." "Then let's do that." It took time. Victoria went to therapy, working through the complicated grief of losing someone who'd hurt her. She cried more than she expected, laughed more too. Slowly, the weight she'd been carrying started to lift. By the time fall arrived, she felt lighter, freer. One October evening, Ethan and Victoria were sitting on the porch. Their spot now, the place they went to talk about everything and nothing. "I've been thinking," Ethan said. "About?" He pulled a small box from his pocket. Victoria's breath caught. "I know this isn't perfect," Ethan said. "I know we've been through hell to get here, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to build a life with you, a real one. Will you marry me?" Victoria stared at the ring, simple, beautiful, nothing like the ostentatious diamond Richard had given her. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger and she kissed him, tears streaming down her face. Maya appeared in the doorway, grinning. Finally. They got married in December, a small ceremony in Ethan's backyard. Just close friends, a few family members, and the people from the foundation who'd become like family. Maya was the flower girl, taking her role very seriously. Victoria wore a simple dress, nothing fancy, and Ethan wore a suit that was slightly too tight in the shoulders but made him look good anyway. When the officiant asked if they took each other, they both said yes without hesitation. And when they kissed, Maya cheered, and everyone laughed, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. The years that followed weren't perfect. The foundation faced funding challenges. Maya went through a rebellious phase that tested everyone's patience. Ethan's business had slow seasons. Victoria still had nightmares sometimes, waking up in a cold sweat, and Ethan would hold her until she fell back asleep. But they faced it together. The foundation helped thousands of people, giving them the resources and support to rebuild their lives. Victoria became a voice for survivors, speaking at conferences, writing articles, using her story to help others. Ethan's business grew into something he was proud of, something that supported his family and gave him purpose. Maya grew up strong and kind, with a sense of justice inherited from Victoria and a steady calm inherited from Ethan. They built a life. Not a perfect one, but a real one. One winter evening, 5 years after that first midnight phone call, Victoria and Ethan sat on their porch, the same porch where they'd had so many conversations, where they'd figured out how to be together. Snow was falling softly, coating the yard in white. "Do you ever think about that night?" Victoria asked. "When I called you?" "All the time." "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't answered?" Ethan considered it. "Yeah,
but I'm glad I did.
Me too. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I used to think power came from money, from success, from being untouchable. But it doesn't. What does it come from? Choosing to show up every day, even when it's hard. That's real power. Ethan smiled. Look at you, getting philosophical. I learned from the best. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall, Maya's laughter drifting from inside where she was video chatting with friends. Thank you, Victoria said quietly. For what? For showing up that night, and every night since. Ethan pulled her closer. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. And he meant it. Years later, when people asked Victoria about her story, about how she'd survived and rebuilt, she never gave them the answer they expected. She didn't talk about strength or resilience or any of the buzzwords people like to use. She talked about a phone call, a man who answered in the middle of the night, a daughter who shared her pancakes, a small house that became a home. She talked about the difference between having everything and having what mattered. And she talked about how sometimes the bravest thing you could do wasn't staying, it was leaving, and finding someone who never asked you to be anything but yourself, someone who showed up and never left.